Is there like a handbook that I can read for this?
Yes, I will send it to you since I had to do the Zoom thing, and it does give you like caveats as to like what to do with public, private, or unlisted. I will send it your way. All right. Okay, I think we have a pretty big agenda. I'll start since I think of the first one on the announcements. This is something that just came up this week. So we don't have a AppSec counterpart. I think it's something in the works. There's been a lot of different movements as far as like what are counterparts for other departments and how do they interact with us. But for now, the advice has been just go to their Slack channel and then they will prioritize it and help us as needed. If we need help outside of that, let's just make sure we document it or say like, hey, this is the type of help we need so that we can advocate for a stable counterpart if we truly need one. And yeah.
Okay, cool. Mine's short. So you're all going to get merch requests from me. I'm going to try to keep them small. Carry on. That is all. Who's after me? Maverick.
Okay, two announcements. First, I want to announce that there are two amazing promotions on our team. So let's clap real quick for Lena and Ali. Both have been promoted. I will definitely announce it in the big channel, but let's give them a round of applause.
Woo!
Woo! And the next bit is that we will have three new team members joining. I've been hard at work trying to recruit. So the first obviously was already there, Angelo, but Samuel and Jean Gabriel will also be joining to help us with front end C#. That'll be Samuel. He's also a machine learning engineer who wants to be on the editor extensions team. And there will be Jean Gabriel, who will help out with Kotlin and is willing to learn any other language. Those are my two announcements.
Where are they
Awesome.
located?
The whole crew, all three, are located in the Americas. So Canada and I believe Texas.
I like how those are like Canada, the country, and then Texas, because I was like, I very much feel like Texas can be its own country sometimes. So, um,
This is
cool.
being recorded, so I'll say nothing.
Oh, I was like, it's big enough. All right, for more serious topics. All right, we're getting a lot of things around self-signed certificates. And so part of this is me kind of walking into, hey, is this something that's been prevalent? And Thomas and Amy wrote documentation a while back about basically how to make sure, like, if you're using self-signed certs, like, here are the instructions, here are best practices. So I kind of wanted to open up to the room as in, is that just not happening? And we're not pointing them to that documentation. Is that documentation not enough? Just kind of want to open it up. And also, this won't include little pieces like the language server piece that Elena and Tristan are working on, since I understand that it's a little bit of like, hey, we're just not respecting that cert on the language server side. So opening it up and going on mute.
Okay, so Tristan helped to fix it and he created two MRs on the VS Code extension side and the language server side. I was testing them today. They set up the environment actually to test it. It's like a bit complicated. Thomas gave me an idea how to do that. The problem is that so far I have it working for the VS Code extension and it still doesn't work for the language server, and I don't see why. Probably I leave the instructions for Tristan to continue working on his birthday, and we'll see how it goes. And this is it so far.
Yeah,
What about in general?
yeah, I was gonna say like the general thing, I think it became more prevalent. There was workarounds in place and also support for some certificate options in VS Code, and folks had already followed the instructions. But then when we switched code suggestions from VS Code itself to the language server, we started seeing additional errors for people who had already had things working in VS Code and the rest of the extension was working. But because we weren't respecting all of the options, they weren't able to test or trial, etc., with the code suggestions like Duo code suggestions. To sort of like because we moved over to a new implementation, we just weren't respecting some of the options that we had previously respected. And the next thing is I'm not actually sure that we link to people to this documentation immediately. But it's something that I've started going through and like trying to update like merge request templates and issue templates to say, hey, like have you gone through, have you checked if there's proxy, have you checked your like certificate options, etc. And then it's like one of the basic like debugging steps is, hey, can you try disabling that option? Now that the language server, like a while back, I updated the language server to respect the ignore certificate errors option. And now that that's available, that's a really easy first line thing that they can do. If they disable that in VS Code, it will go through the language server. And then if they're able to do things, then yes, it's SSL issues or proxy issues. And we can like very quickly sort of identify from there, okay, what options will we need to support this specific like customer environment, you know? So I think once we get the consistency that Lena and Tristan are working on for the language server and VS Code piece and it's being passed through, then we'll see less of it again. But we just need to make sure that we're linking the folks to this documentation, I think. And make sure that it's also accessible across extensions. Because right now we're like the benefit of the language server having those options is going to hit all the extensions, but we just need to make sure that we're passing through options. So we'll have to do like minor merge requests to update the language server and pass through options on the other extensions.
Cool. So it sounds like we may need to update the template to actually point them to the, hey, this is how we're doing self-signed certs. This is the best practice. And okay, cool. Who wants to update the template?
Do we think would it be a better, I'm happy to update the merge request template, but what I'm wondering is would it make more sense to move this self-signed cert documentation to the doc site? Because right now we have like a self-signed certs on
Yeah.
the Google doc site for GitLab in general, the server. And would it make sense to have like a companion page for extensions? Hey, if you're using our extensions, here's the general steps you take. Here's the specific extension workflow.
Let me rephrase it in a way that will make sense. Do I want to do this 5 times or once?
Yeah.
Uh,
One thing that I'm worried about with the ignore certs error especially is, are we bypassing any security? Because I always feel very, very wary when we're like, oh, ignore certs, here's self-signed certificate. We are a security first company. Usually I've seen those setups when people don't want to go through their own teams, as in like hey, nobody wants to talk to the Zscaler team. Like I've been there. And I'm not a developer and I know how painful that is. So I'm wondering, is it like, are we encouraging not best practices and creating more work for us down the line?
Yeah, but myself, whenever I say, hey, can you try this option? It's a, hey, can you try this option that I absolutely do not want you all to use in production, but just to unblock you while you're trying to trial this, or to unblock that one specific user that has a weird setup in your environment, can you check if it works if you disable their certificate errors? And okay, you're ignoring certificate errors and it works. Okay, now that we know that, we can confirm it's your specific setup and let's see how we can move forward with it, essentially. So it's always like big disclaimer, please don't enable this. This is a security issue, right? Like, you know, you're opening yourself to man in the middle if that's something you like, don't deploy that to all your users. Deploy it to a subset of users who know to like re-disable it. You can have like group policy and stuff to make sure that their default settings don't have that, etc. You know, it's very much like raise the red flag, like do not do this forever in production, but just to help troubleshoot this specific issue in your instance, you know. So
Well, I'll open up an issue, and Amy, maybe we can pair on it along with everybody else to make sure like the wording is right and we kind of cover ourselves on anything we publish in the docs. I am a little worried not having an AppSec counterpart They're like, what are you talking about? Don't do this. So we'll ask, but I do agree with, hey, yeah, let's do it once versus like 5 times or 100 times for every single issue.
It seems like Greg is aligned to a couple of our teams, like a stable counterpart for a couple of like the create teams. So probably just makes sense. Greg is really responsive when I've had to ping him on a merge request in the past.
A quick guide to how to get things merged into the GitLab repo very quickly. If I am the author of a merge request, I'm supposed to get it reviewed by another member of the tech writing team. If the rest of you are the author, I'm the editor and I can merge as soon as I'm done. Use this information wisely.
What's
Sorry, I'm
Greg's
having
last
a,
name?
yeah, I remember Greg. I can look it up in Slacks. I know we have a couple of Slacks with him. I can update it. I'm still having a hard time. Ollie, thanks for typing since I was like trying to type, but then I'm trying to talk and it's always very hard. Okay, cool. Is there anything here that we didn't cover? Extra step for JetBrains. Okay, cool. I think I'll just create an issue kind of covering this, and then we can piggyback the docs off of it and then kind of keep JetBrains piece in there as well, and just make sure we have all the extensions covered. Okay, I have the next one, and that'll be the last one for me. Summit, yay! I took a look at the agenda and it seems like really packed, and I'm under the impression that they have scheduled everything out for us, like who you're having dinner with that night, what are you doing, here's your choice of like the sessions. I took a look at the Slack channel because people were asking like, hey, should we do like team dinners? And I know there's a few that are being set up by Darva and then like on the product side as well. So it makes more sense to do something after dinner. So I put out some options. It's like the camp counselor in me when I was in high school just kind of came alive and I was like, what do we want to do? So couple of things, and it looks like Lana's, hey, let's go see a show is winning.
Yeah, I don't know how many nights we have like to spend together outside of the usual agenda, but like I've seen in chats that people want to see the show. So yes, we can do that. The only question is how we organize ourselves. I've seen the tickets are selling like pretty quickly, and I've seen Emmy mention this O show. I'm not sure it's pronounced like O, but it seems there are no tickets available now for this like specific show. But we can check again because
Well, from
Yeah,
what I
usually-
understand, Darva and Tim are setting up a range of different things for the teams to do, but we haven't gotten any information on it either. But I would love for us to do something outside of that bit. And I'm cool with Cirque du Soleil or whatever we decide to do. It'll be cool to just hang out and share some laughs together. But also when I find out more about what is being planned by Darva and by Tim, I'll definitely share that information when I can. And I can take point on the Cirque du Soleil stuff if you guys want that. And that's it.
Dasha, you mentioned a schedule that was very packed. What
Mhm.
is there an issue where that schedule is, or is it just in the back of your head?
It's okay, so when I say it's packed, as in like there's very little information, but like the
Right.
entire day is covered. So if you go to like the Summit website and put in like your code and then like your email, it'll give you like the agenda. It's full from a times perspective, but not a lot of information. So I'm kind of hoping more will come out. There is an entire Summit project. So if you're interested in connecting with anybody over a certain interest, Laura, I did see people were trying to climb and they had like an issue open. It was from like months ago. So I'm not sure if like they actually solidified anything, but check out that Summit project and I think they'll have more information there. But that's as far as I know about the agenda. Unless somebody has more, because I'd love to see it.
No, that's the
Uh,
information I had. I was just hoping somebody
Okay.
else said something.
And even in the private channels, it's the same. It's just like a block of time.
Mhm.
and we're not sure what's happening with the block of time, but hopefully they'll give some information soon.
Yeah, and I think if we like buy into it as I'm like, hey, let's go to a show. I mean, I think they'll be fine. It looks like 7 to 9 probably will be dinner, and then right after that, we can just do whatever we want. Because I know people will also be jet lagged.
Also, I want to check to see if instead of doing like a team dinner, we could do the show. So let me chat with Darva to see instead of like the team, because they have a team dinner. So instead of us doing like a team dinner, maybe we can do the Cirque du Soleil show. Maybe I can reimburse it, but let me check with Darva on that one.
Yeah, that would be awesome. We can do a team buffet and then go to a show. Let's see if anybody's been to Vegas. Buffets are a big deal. Cool. Aaron, I think you have the next one.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, it's just around like stable counterparts, back to one of your announcements. Like I know in incubation I didn't have a UX stable counterpart, so I found it sometimes like weird, like reaching out to UX since there was no stable person. I take it UX is still not giving the stable counterparts out to everybody because I know they're quite short on people a while back. So I'm just curious, like, what do we think the best form going forward would be for things like Duo chats where we're like implementing something across extensions and we want an idea around like keeping consistency?
Yeah. Andy Volpe is our temporary stable counterpart. He is also a people manager, so obviously it's like his time is pretty packed. I've been trying to use him sparingly because also he does not have like the context that somebody like, let's say Katie has, and she's a lot closer to the projects that we work on. So Katie McCoy is kind of the UXD for chat, especially. I never want to overwhelm her but as she said, she will choose what she wants to work on. And if it's like we're asking for too much, she will obviously push back. So I think let's use her as we can for chat. But for other things, it would be Andy. And I know that Derek encouraged me to just tag Andy in things so that at least he has visibility of like the UXD needs that we need, UXD needs that we want. Yeah. What does everybody think?
That makes total sense to me, and I've pinged Katie on issues in the past, and she's been helpful whenever I was on incubation. So, but yeah, I know that there's quite a lot under some people's scope in UX. So I think just getting stuff to Andy for visibility makes a lot of sense.
Just quick question: does every team have a stable counterpart? Do we need to have? Okay. Do they? There was a yes and a no. Does every
Not
team have
every
a
team.
stable? Okay.
Some teams have more than others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think generally each group has a stable counterparts, but some like in the case of secure, like there's like multiple stable counterparts for like different people, but in other groups like there'd be one stable counterpart for or like under secure there might have been one stable counterpart touching 2 or 3 groups, like and they were sort of owning it, but then maybe one other group had a separate person. It depends on the scope and the UX needs. Some teams have less UX needs than others. If it's something
Okay.
very forward facing in GitLab.com, it's going to be something where there might be a stable counterpart. But if it's something like editor extensions where we have some UX needs, but not necessarily all of them, and there's like differences, then it's not like a guaranteed thing.
Just a follow-up question for that. As a team, do we see ourselves needing a temporary but consistent, stable counterpart for a few months, for just a go-to person that's assigned to our team and can basically action the things that we need? Is that a conversation that I need to have to see if we can have someone stable for, say, 6 months or something if UX is starting to ramp up?
Maybe.
Give it some thought. Give it some
Yeah.
thought.
Yeah. No, that's
So
that's
I know that, so we don't own the chat component that we're using right now. Technically it's been styled for us, you know. and everything like that, but we potentially might need to add additional styles. If the goal for us is just implement it, don't add styles, don't think about UX, that's not our business, then we need to really honor that and not try to change anything that that component gives us. That way we won't need a UX person to take a look. They're another step removed from us.
Okay.
Think for the sake of the consistency of chat itself, like we have access to Katie, and then like if there's anything that you're seeing that's a little weird, like she'll be the person to obviously talk to. I think like
Cool.
the bigger piece that I've been also talking to Derek about was like we do need somebody on from UX design, just even if we're not using pajamas and we're not using styling in the IDE, there's still a lot of thought and consistency that I know like collectively we may catch, but we're not going to get everything. So I have been advocating for one, hence why let's just tag Andy in a lot of things that we truly need help with so that he has the visibility. But I think it's more because editor extensions are so new. The first piece was like, what is the actual need and like what is their scope of work? Since it'll be very different than, from my understanding, what UXD does, let's say, in like the GitLab UI, right?
Yeah, I think to John's points, there's like a shared components right now. The reason I brought it up is because I was doing a maintainer review in the VS Code extension, which was updating chat to add a bunch of new functionality to the Vue app. But that Vue app is not shared between the VS Code side and the JetBrains side. There's different apps. So we
Yep.
don't get any of those benefits automatically in JetBrains. And that's why I'm sort of interested, like from that side of things, do we need to have a shared component? And the answer is yeah, it makes sense to have something shared. So I've created a component, or I've created a proposal that Dennis, who from the like AI framework side, Dennis has started like we're going to be going back and forth on that proposal, and I'm not sure who is going to own that. It may make sense for editor extensions, but obviously Dennis has been doing a lot of the contributions for the Duo chat on VS Code initially. So it seems like it's sort of like a shared ownership at the minute. But then eventually, if there is a Duo chat group, then with the components and everything, which is already going through UX, does it make sense to have something shared there? So I can
Yeah.
tag yourself, Dasha, and yourself, Maverick, in that as well, just so y'all get visibility into that issue. You can probably ping UX people in there as well. And John, I'll assign yourself as someone else who's probably interested in the Vue component.
Excellent. That sounds perfect.
I'm for it. I don't want to own chat personally, since there is like a dedicated team that owns chat and all of the fun mechanics underneath it. But I think from an implementation standpoint, as in like as we expand into like Visual Studio, it makes sense. And I think like we started, Aaron, was that the piece that I think I commented on and then John commented on as far as like what would this look like and then how do we involve the language server in it? Okay. I think if it helps us, let's do it. Let's have that conversation and just do what you think is best. Because it does sound like we're just kind of doing a lot of things in one spot and then transferring to the next, and then like context is lost. And I know at least context is lost for me, as in like what's happening in VS Code. Because one thing to keep in mind is like we do own that, right? Because we own the extension piece, like we'll also be responsible for maintaining Duo chat in VS Code.
Mhm.
What those boundaries are, I think, are up for debate, but we'll see. All
And then
right.
yeah, the next
Oh, go ahead,
agenda.
Aaron.
No, so I was just gonna say the next item in the agenda we already touched on essentially. It was like, is there a need for the UX stable counterpart and sort of like some sort of like who's gonna be the DRI for Duo chat between the two things. And thanks everybody's put notes on it, and we sort of had a discussion around it already.
And one last announcement. Starting next week, we will alternate the times that we host our syncs so that Tristan can participate. So next week's will be a little bit later. And then we'll do alternating weeks. So Next week will be a little bit later. I'll figure out what time that is that works for most people on the team. And then, we'll have our time this time the following week, and we'll just alternate. And I'll work that out with you, Dasha, on how we can update the invites.
I will send you the not so lengthy instructions. And yeah, go from there.
All right, is that all for the day? Happy Thursday to everyone.
I think we ran out of time for a coffee chat.
Man.
I'm gonna try to be better about putting things ahead of time because I know a lot of it is just more of like announcements and like only reads. But yeah.
Well, have a wonderful day, everyone. And congrats again to Lena and to Ali.
Yes, congratulations.
Woo!
Congratulations.